Hello everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to the Enabling Water Smart Communities webinar. This is the first webinar of our spring series. My name is Kat Moncrieff and I will be chairing today's webinar, and I'm from CIWEM, the Chartered Institution of Water and Environmental Management. So today is the first of 5 webinars in the project's spring webinar series. The aim of the series is to share progress with and findings from the Enabling Water Smart Communities project. And I'll go on to talk about that project soon, but I first want to just explain a bit about the organisations behind this webinar. So this is a joint webinar between the Enabling Water Smart Communities project and ADEPT, and then it's hosted by CIWEM. And as I was saying, CIWEM is the Chartered Institution of Water and Environmental Management. So it's a Royal Chartered professional body and an independent charity dedicated to sustainable management of the environment. ADEPT is the Association of Directors for the Environment, Economy, Planning and Transport. It represents directors of place from county, unitary and combined authorities, along with subnational transport boards and also corporate partners, which are drawn from key service sectors. So these directors are responsible for providing day-to-day services, including local highways, recycling, planning, as well as strategic long-term planning and delivery of sustainable places. So today we're joined by 2 ADEPT representatives, and I'll introduce those in a moment. And the webinar is an opportunity to bring together ADEPT and CIWEM members and professionals in the development and water sectors to highlight the critical role of integrated water management in building climate resilient and water smart places and new homes. And today you'll also be hearing from experts from Thames Water, a water supply and sewerage company, and also from WSP, a global engineering and professional services firm. And before we get into the detail, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So next slide, please. So this meeting is being recorded. If you have any objections to this recording, then please let us know. There's no obligation for attendees to turn their cameras on or microphones on. That's just for the speakers. If you experience any technical issues and need assistance, then please raise your hand and use the chat feature on the Zoom and let us know what the problem is and what help is needed. And we'll take any questions at the end of the presentation. So if you'd like to put a question or make a comment about the talk, then please use the Q&A function in Zoom. And if you can ask who you're aiming your question to, that would be brilliant. Okay, next slide. So I'd like to introduce the panel and speakers today. I will do a quick introduction to the Enabling Water Smart Communities project, and then Rob Naylor from Thames Water will present on awareness and collaboration between institutions for water smart communities. So Rob's going to share some findings from webinars and a survey that we did as part of the Enabling Water Smart Communities project. And Rob is an innovation and process engineer, and he's working to investigate how to embed circularity across water sector operations. Then we'll move on to the WSP team. So Lena Nieto and Nessa Stromberg from WSP will share insights on integrated water management studies, which to date haven't always been fully implemented. So they'll share some insights also drawn from workshops and case studies from the Enabling Water Smart Communities projects. And finally, we have ADEPT representatives, Wendy and Sam, to reflect on what they've heard. So they'll be providing a local authority perspective on collaborative working and integrated water management. And then we'll move on to a Q&A session at the end where we can answer all your burning questions. But just to introduce Wendy and Sam in a bit more detail. So Wendy works for Norfolk County Council. She's the head of environment. So that's a key service delivering across natural and historic environment, protected landscapes, trails and active travel. She worked previously at the Environment Agency, both at a regional level and at a national level, and was actually involved in the National Flood Coastal Risk Strategy for England. Sam works for Essex County Council. She's a Director of Environment and Climate Action. So she's driving the authority's response to the climate challenge. And in doing that, she leads a really broad portfolio of services, including waste, energy, flood resilience, green space, outdoor education, culture and heritage. So she brings a wealth of experience with a career spanning central government, Transport for London and the Energy Saving Trust. Okay, so those are our speakers and our panel. I will now move on to introduce the project very briefly. So next slide, please. And next slide again. Thank you. So enabling water smart communities, it's an innovation project which is about exploring the relationship between integrated water management, community practices and housing development. And it aims to unlock opportunities for delivering water smart communities and ensuring long-term stewardship of water. The project is funded through the Ofwat Innovation Breakthrough Challenge Fund. And you can see there that there are many different delivery partners involved, including water companies, academic research institutions, and the Community Land Trust. We also have an independent program board which guides the project, made up of developer organizations and relevant government bodies. Okay, next slide, please. Before we go into further details, what do we actually mean by a water smart community? So there's a kind of description there, or a bit of a definition, but it's essentially where water-related assets and systems such as rainwater harvesting and sustainable drainage are included in the design stage and built into the fabrication of a place. But it's not just about the sort of hardware, it's also about the software or the members of the community, and it's about them understanding, valuing and taking ownership for those assets and systems so that we can enhance the value of water and cultivate more sustainable water use. Okay, next slide please, Nathan. So why do we need this Enabling Water Smart Communities project? So the project's aiming to address the shared challenges faced by the water and housing sector. And on this slide, you can see those illustrated by the news articles there. So these include the issues of water scarcity. So we're facing a 4.8 billion litres per day deficit in water by 2050 if we don't take any action to address that. And then as climate change bites, the risk of flooding is rising. And then in other areas, we also have the issue of sewage pollution and lack of capacity in the sewer system, and that's impacting or delaying housing growth as well, because those sewer systems just don't have the capacity to meet the needs of those new homes. So the project's looking at ways that we can overcome these blockers to housing growth, or these issues with houses, in a kind of holistic and integrated way. And importantly, it's also looking at how we can mainstream smart approaches into new housing developments. And by smart approaches, it's things like water reuse, rainwater harvesting, sustainable drainage, so that all new homes have those things embedded within them. Okay, next slide, please. So the early stage of the project drew together many different pieces of research. It undertook interviews to explore the various perspectives and challenges and opportunities associated with water smart communities. Many of that research, that initial research, is captured on the project's Medium site, where we've got these articles, these kind of bite-sized articles about these issues. And that phase identified blockers associated with developing and adopting water smart communities. And then also what needs to happen to remove or resolve those blockers. And we called those enabling actions for water smart communities. You can see though that we've grouped them according to the 3 identified enabling principles, so stewardship, values, and assets. And if we go on to the next slide, please, this shows the initial enabling actions that we're working on at the moment. So next slide, please. Brilliant. So these are the enabling actions that the project has been working on to date, and we've got a new set that we're initiating at the moment. But these are the current ones. Sorry, one back, please. So today we're focusing on the first one, water for people and places, and this has been led by Thames Water, and WSP have had a big role in it as well. So it's been delving into integrated water management and also that collaboration between water companies, local authorities, and developers to try and unlock the shared value of water smart communities. So I'm going to hand over to Rob, who's going to get stuck into the details of this. So far away, Rob.
Great. Cheers, Kat. Yeah, nice to meet you all. I'm Rob, a research engineer in the Thames Innovation Department. If we could go on to the next slide, please. So collaboration between anchor institutes like water companies, local authorities, and building developers is going to be key to creating water smart communities across the UK. Thames Water's work packages have focused on taking action to facilitate greater collaboration between these key stakeholder groups and to understand how we can help each other make water smart communities the norm across the country. Next slide, please. Yeah, so firstly, we decided to focus on the relationship between the water sector and local authorities. We began this work by hosting a webinar with over 100 attendees from the local authorities in the Thames Water area on the topic of water sustainability and how we manage water more intelligently. We use this to understand how well our organisations have collaborated to date on these topics and to identify opportunities to improve going forward. More fundamentally, we also aim to understand how important water management was to local authorities and where it sat among their other priorities like meeting housing targets and creating opportunities for economic growth. And finally, we use the webinars as an opportunity to share the Enabling Water Smart Communities project's perspective on areas to improve collaboration between the water sector and local authorities, to address issues of water and scarcity, and to improve our approach to drainage and rainwater management in new development. So this included things like building awareness of the water sector's environmental incentive programme, where the water sector offers tiered payments to building developers for achieving greater water efficiency than the minimum required in building regulations. This is incentivising the introduction of kind of water efficient fittings and also the introduction of water reuse technologies like rainwater harvesting and grey water recycling, and ultimately going towards that aim of water neutrality by maximising water efficiency in new development, and then also offsetting the additional usage by retrofitting water efficient technologies in existing homes. We also shared the pressure that the water sector is under to provide more and more potable water to industrial water users. We're seeing lots of increasing demand from things like data centres and power plants at the moment, and ultimately how these applications could be rejected in order to preserve water supplies that we have to provide to homes. So we're kind of already seeing this as an emerging issue. I think Essex and Suffolk Water are already putting a stop on new industrial kind of water supplies in this context. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what did we find? Many local authority respondents stated that water was a clear priority in their decision-making process. However, it was below other organisational and strategic priorities like achieving construction targets for new homes and net zero. That seemed to be relatively true unless water scarcity was already acting as a regulatory blocker on new development in their region, I suppose showing that legislative drivers are key to change in this area. Despite stating that water was a priority, we found limited awareness of key pieces of legislation regarding water scarcity. So, for example, just 8% of respondents knew there was a national water target set by DEFRA, which stated the UK must reduce water going into the public supply by 20% by 2037. Additionally, 79% of respondents didn't know water companies were not obliged to provide water to industrial users, which could potentially act as a blocker on economic development if water continues to get more and more scarce. However, we did find much better awareness on SUDS and modern approaches to drainage, with good awareness of Schedule 3 and broad support for a national approach being developed to the design, construction, adoption and maintenance of SUDS. We found that current levels of collaboration between the water sector and local authorities is essentially insufficient on the issues regarding water management. Only 14% of respondents from local authorities felt there was enough engagement between Thames Water and themselves on these issues. Additionally, we found just 12% of the respondents were aware that we even had an environmental incentive program that offered these payments for greater water efficiency and new developments. And none of the councils in our area were currently kind of encouraging the uptake of these payments through references to the scheme within their local plans or signposting within the planning process. The responses also showed that adequate resourcing is kind of clearly an issue on both sides of this, with limited capacity to go beyond business as usual. And while there was a lot of ambition to do the right thing in both directions, there was kind of clearly a limited understanding of how to get through to the right people at our respective organisations to drive the necessary improvement. Next slide, please. Yeah, so using these findings, we've kind of compiled some recommendations on how best to push this forward. So fundamentally implementing a holistic approach to water sector and local authority collaboration, which goes beyond kind of the silos within both of our organisations, trying to encompass planning, sustainabilities, highways and drainage and emergency planning, all considering water as a key issue. We also thought it'd be really useful to establish a clear delineation of roles and responsibilities across different organisations when it comes to water management and driving water efficiency. We feel that a shared understanding of these roles will help these kind of anchor institutes work together more effectively to identify areas where organisations are able to assist each other, where we're able to kind of improve, where we're able to help one another out. We should also ensure there's kind of adequate resourcing in both the water sector side and the local authority side. I suppose that's a bit of a wish list, but hopefully that would facilitate greater and kind of more meaningful collaboration on efforts to reduce water demand. It was also kind of through the webinar, there was a clear desire from local authorities to have a regular regional forum between key contacts at local authorities and water companies to allow these issues to be raised and flagged as early as possible. And again, going beyond that kind of superficial consultation level collaboration and finding something that's a bit more meaningful, being able to have a more kind of constructive conversation. And yeah, both parties to really engage with each other early, provide more clarity on what policies and initiatives they have ongoing in this area and how that's likely to impact one another, and providing kind of more clarity on key timelines and key dates for consultations and submissions. So next slide, please. Yeah, so in terms of moving this forward, how do we drive this greater collaboration between anchor institutes like the water sector or local authorities and building developers? So following our webinar, we kind of identified environmental incentives as a key focus area. I think it was really clear that the water sector needed to simplify what it was offering, making it easier for local authorities and building developers to work with us and to engage with them. In April of this year, so very recently, Ofwat has released a kind of common framework which rolled out environmental incentives across the UK, across England, I should say. Our webinar showed, though, that there's kind of limited awareness of their existence, and Thames have been running their environmental incentive programme for over 2 years now, and we've seen very limited uptake among developers so far. So I think simplifying this offering will be a really key task, and that's something that building developers have kind of specifically asked us to do. So we started by reviewing what each company now offers on environmental incentives. And while it was good to see consistent use of the water efficiency approach, there was kind of frustrating differences in the types of incentive on offer, how they're presented among different water companies and how they're audited. Therefore, we've tried to produce a kind of compilation document that simplifies each water company's environmental incentive into a 2-page summary. This really clearly has a common structure and states what the infrastructure charge is for new developments, what the value of the environmental incentive is, and what kind of water efficient technologies that links to, how to apply for the environmental incentive, how the audit process will work, and how you will ultimately be paid. I suppose we hope this is going to ultimately make environmental incentives easier to engage with and will allow building developers to better understand what's on offer, and will hopefully also allow local authorities to kind of find simple ways of signposting their existence and signposting them within the planning process. I suppose another key aspect of driving collaboration between anchor institutes is making integrated water management studies more accessible and encouraging best practice to push forward. And this is where Thames Water's work with the WSP team fits in. So yeah, I'll close up there and hand over to the WSP team.
Thank you, Rob. Hi all, I'm Nessa from WSP, and Lena and I will be presenting on the work done with Thames Water within the Enabling Water Smart Community project surrounding integrated water management studies. Next slide, please. Firstly, we'd like to thank all of the public bodies, water companies, developers, and consultants which helped us to complete this stream of work. Here they are on the slide here. Sorry, there's too many to read out, but next slide, please. The content will go over the context, the methodology, and then key findings and the wrap up. So first onto the context. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This stream of work was triggered by the concept that our current water management system is complex, with many components such as water supply, flood risk management, water quality research, and resource planning. And each of these components require input from many organisations, with frequently competing interests, which fragments the sector. Therefore, often the solutions favoured are those which are cheaper and easier, which creates a barrier to protecting the natural environment and misses opportunities for better outcomes. Effective use of integrated water management may allow us to lessen the impacts of a fragmented sector. Next slide, please. The overall aim of the review was to provide a comprehensive assessment of the current state of the integrated water management studies in the UK. We did this through a literature review, and it aims to identify the barriers, enablers, and influence their effective adoption and long-term sustainability. By evaluating both technical and governance-related challenges, the report highlights the opportunities to enhance the integration of integrated water management principles into policy planning and development. Next slide, please. This here is an overview of the 11 key recommendations of the stream of work. The stream of work was so I'll go over the methodology next. So, but the key recommendations here will go into much more detail from Lena in a few short minutes. It is acknowledged that an IWMS is independent of its intended purpose, and that each consultant is dependent of its intended purpose, and that each consultancy has developed its own technical approach to IWMS. On this basis, a blueprint is not an appropriate output for this work. Instead, a suite of key IWMS recommendations were outputted. These are intended to complement guidance, such as Syria, and not replace it. And it is important that stakeholders understand which recommendations are relevant to them and make it clear on specific actions that they can take. Next slide, please. In the interest of time, I will simply touch briefly on methodology. So next slide, please. The work stream consisted of 3 parts. The initial literature review, which reviewed 24 IWMS studies completed in the UK in order to pick out key insights, understand their current status, and know the pitfalls and best practices. We then conducted dedicated interviews with consultants and also with Syria to understand their perspectives of the barriers and enablers to IWMS. And also we had 3 separate workshops with water companies, public bodies, and developers to understand these key stakeholder views on the barriers and enablers, so we could compare and contrast how the stakeholders' views may be similar or different. Next slide, please. The literature review was completed by aligning methodologies with the Syria framework, as Syria's 2019 report on IWMS identified key success factors and outcomes to evaluate the effectiveness of integrated water management. However, the water management tools have been expanded here, as you can see on the right, to encompass more frequent, on the left, bottom left, to encompass more frequent tools quoted as part of an IWMS. Next slide, please. And next slide. The findings of this report identify both the challenges and opportunities associated with implementation of integrated water management studies. Through the review of case studies, stakeholder interviews, and workshops, it is evident while integrated water management holds significant potential to enhance water resilience, its adaptation is hindered by regulatory framework, funding constraints, government complexities, technical limitations. However, key enablers such as stronger collaboration, financial incentives, technological advancements, and public education are viable pathways to overcoming these barriers. And Lena will now take you through these findings in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nessa. Thank you for that, and it's great to be here with Kat and the rest of the panel. So if we move to the next slide, try to be brief due to time. I'm going to be getting a note. So one of the key findings was the need for clear governance structures, as it mentions on the slide. I think it is evident that all organizations, they work in a different way, and that also integrated water management is quite new in comparison to other activities. And so there's still it's still disjointed. There's no clear responsibility. And of course, there's multiple well, not only layers, but also policies and guidances. And so this leads that we do need clear governance structures. Next slide. Of course, finance had to come into play. So, when consultants were being interviewed, of course, they would work with their clients to try and integrate some of the solutions into the projects, but of course, sometimes everything comes down to numbers. So financial funding, it does become an issue. So there's a recognition that that we should try and identify alternative sources to be able to have a more holistic approach. So I think that will be the next step to explore how we go about doing this and what are the potential opportunities to be able to do this. Next slide. Data, I think data management, not only for integrated water management, but also I think across the board, it is becoming better, but I think there's still a long way to go on the water industry, if you like. So we do need to improve the synergies on data. Data is very important because it would allow us to improve our performance, to understand what is working, what isn't, and to be able to drive efficiencies and work more smartly. So there's definitely an opportunity to improve our data understanding. Next slide. And I think, as Rob mentioned before, and as in the presentation, I think collaboration is a key driver to be able to be where we want to be to reach that point of ambition. So we do need everybody working together, and we need everybody working together early on. Not as an ad hoc or as an afterthought. So it does require a lot of time and knowledge also for people to understand what it needs to be done and when. So collaboration is key if we want to succeed in this. Next slide. As we all know, well, water reuse and other elements, they're still quite new. And so we still need to have to increase public education and, of course, engagement. So we need to tackle any misconceptions that there could be. We need to improve public trust. And I think for everyone to better understand the policy frameworks that we have. So there is a key role on the community and the education and awareness to be able to drive a holistic approach. Next slide. So what are the future strategies? So of course, as it says on the slide, we need to progress IWMS around flood risk, blue-green infrastructure, water efficiency, there are still certain gaps when the case studies were being analyzed and interviews and workshops being conducted. There seem to be still some methodologies or approaches that are not being well used, like greywater recycling. So there's more that we can do to be able to improve that. And then, of course, integrated water management will can help to address climate change, all the targets that we have, including all related with biodiversity, is all interconnected. So there are opportunities, which is excellent. Next slide. So as Nessa mentioned, these are the recommendations. I think because of matter of time, I don't think we can go into detail in all of them, but it has been summarized, I think, the most important ones before. And I think there will be a next step as to how do we then go about addressing or taking the opportunities to be able to get integrated water management to a BAU, because at the moment is as and when. So I think these recommendations can take it to the next level of where we would want it to be, to see. Next slide. If we go to the next one. So in summary, from this review of case studies of integrated water management studies that was undertaken, we have seen the recommendations, the challenges, the enablers, and as you can see on the slide, it's all to do with we need better alignment on policy, and of course its application, be working together. Finance, we need to find alternative ways to fund this. I wouldn't say innovation, because I think most of them are already implemented, but the fragmentation, just kind of bringing everything together. And data, super important. We definitely need to drive a focus on data, because data is going to help on performance, on to prove what works, what doesn't, how can it be improved, efficiencies, everything. So data is quite crucial. And then, of course, yeah, as it was mentioned, the education side and the public awareness. I won't go through the enablers, as it was mentioned before, but getting distracted by all the pop-ups in the Q&A. But yeah, all of these, there's more information on the report that will be published. I know that there is going to be more information on this. I'm sure that Kat will share what the next steps for the reports will be. But all the case studies are named in the report, and it explains which one ticks which boxes, who is doing what, and why it's relevant. So hopefully that will give you a better understanding of this piece of work. This was just a very brief snapshot of the work that was done. Thank you. Is there a next slide? Oh, there is a next slide. Forgot about this one. So, so the next steps for addressing the challenges is we would like to see action and commitments. Of course, is going to require everybody to be sitting on the table and discussing how we're going to go about doing this. And as we want to see strategies that are mainly scalable, to take it from one little place to the whole country, or to the catchments also, depending on, of course, on the area, because every area is different. And then we must make sure that implementation takes place, because sometimes in the case studies, they would mention that they have done something. And then when you interview and you go to the area, then it's not taking place. So implementation is super important that it takes place. And I think that is the last slide, right? Yes.
I think that is.
Super. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lena. Thank you, Nesta, and thank you, Rob, for taking us through that work. So now over to Wendy and Sam to provide a little bit of a reflection on what they've heard there. And I wonder whether any of that resonates or whether they've got examples of where those things have happened. So yeah, it'd be really great to hear your reflections. Who's going first?
Shall I go first, Sam? And then you will no doubt follow up with your reflections. So thank you very much. Excellent presentation and really good work. And there was a lot that resonated with me. I'm fairly new to working in a local authority, only a year and a half. And I've come from the Environment Agency, which is obviously a big regulator of water and managing flood risk, etc. So I think the things that really resonated to me is that sort of collaboration, that early collaboration, and really speaking across stakeholders and different stakeholders, because I think we have a water sector that is still very siloed. So we deal with flood risk over here, and we deal with, water quality over here, and we deal with water resources over here. And actually in Norfolk, where I'm from, we have all those things. We have too little water, too much water, and we have poor water quality. And all those things affect the services that the local authority are trying to deliver, whether it's infrastructure, future infrastructure, strategic housing growth, economic growth, and those sort of, industries, farming all the way through to, as you say, data centres. How are we enabling growth of our economy and those business users, as well as the business users we already have in the county, where we do have these really big climate risks. And the way to do that, as you pointed out, is that really early collaborating across a whole range of stakeholders, and not the normal people. I think when we talk about water, we've got to include people who are managing land, because land is absolutely critical to this agenda as well. So I absolutely recognise that and resonate in terms of, and I know it's very difficult I'm at the county level, we've got 6 or 7 districts and boroughs across Norfolk, so it's very hard for a water company to be able to liaise with us. But I think particularly county councils can be conveners and bring people together. So the integration piece is really important. We've seen that in Norfolk. We are not only about to do a Norfolk and Suffolk joint piece of work on integrated water strategy, because we've seen the importance of actually not dealing in sort of silos, but bringing water together and really understanding what that means for us as a county council, as well as all our stakeholders. We've got a Norfolk Water Programme, which is looking at how we use the natural environment and nature-based solutions to help manage the sort of resource and quality issues in Norfolk. And I'd also say, and this is sort of the scalable point, we've also got a project which is called Reclaim the Rain with Suffolk again, which is actually starting at the community level to get the community to think differently about water and their water problems, and find solutions that can help manage their flood risk, for example, and also water reuse. So absolutely, we need these sort of scalable solutions, scalable plans, and scalable action. And I know, Rob, you mentioned about regional groups. Sam and I sit on Water Resources East Board, so that's a regional water resource planning group. Now, that's not integrated across all the elements of water, but that's certainly where that group at a regional scale is trying to work across lots of different sectors and members, and they are able to have, bring local authorities together with water companies and other big sectors as well in the region. So they're just some of my reflections. Hope that wasn't too rambling, but I'm sure I'll hand over to Sam at this point.
Thanks, Wendy. So agree with absolutely all of that. I mean, I think we are still at a place where we are trying to educate people as to the scale of the problem. And it is an absolutely enormous problem. We know in Essex, only 3/5 of our drinking water is sourced in the county. We're already shipping the rest in from other areas. East of England's forecast to be short about 1/3 of its predicted need by 2050. That's 730 million litres per day. I mean, it's absolutely colossal. And that's assuming we achieve our 20% water efficiency targets. And alongside that, we have a growing flood problem. The latest Environment Agency maps show 215,000 homes, about 1/3 of homes in Essex are at some risk of flooding. Genuinely colossal. So we don't have enough water. When it does arrive, it causes us flood problems, and it's also very low quality because only 7% of our watercourses are in a good ecological standard. We know these because we pulled together all of that data in an Essex water strategy that we published last year. But the data point that was made in one of the presentations is really well made, because we had to pull that from multiple water companies and Environment Agency sources to get that holistic picture in the county, and actually really cutting data in a way that is meaningful for local decision makers is key if you want action. It really presented a really shocking picture for local councillors and for local residents. We co-developed a water tool to help people understand and engage with the water challenge in a very interactive way online, rather than just a kind of a dry strategy that sat on a shelf. But that awareness is an ongoing challenge. Just to really understanding the problem is a key issue, and the way that we present data doesn't help people engage with it where they live. On top of our existing challenges, we now have these new housing targets. They're really ambitious, increased housing targets. So we will need very significant investment in water infrastructure. And water management really has to be baked into how we design and plan that new development. Everyone referenced grey water recycling, but it's a cost for developers to do that. And, our experience of energy efficiency in homes is that actually it's required building regulation to drive higher standards. And I suspect this will very strongly be needed. The same thing will be needed to address higher water efficiency standards. We really need regulation to push higher quality housing that really addresses these challenges in the 21st century. Rob referenced the water company's lack of obligation to connect new businesses. And absolutely, we're already seeing caps on the amount of new businesses that will be connected in any one year in Essex. I have to say that councillors were genuinely concerned. There's a kind of an understatement to hear this. It is such an obvious blocker for jobs and growth. So really tackling this is absolutely intrinsic to delivering local ambitions. I sadly recognise the resourcing constraints referenced. I'd welcome anything at all that can be done to help us grip this issue. Totally agree on the importance of partnership working. And I completely echo the kind of frustrations. Wendy and I, as she said, both work very closely with Water Resources East, but they are only looking at water supply. We really need to look at the water system as a whole. Water supply, flooding, water quality, they're all one issue. They need to be brought together. Obviously, we work with developers. We provide SUDS advice to tens of thousands of new homes every year. We're working with highways to replace our trees. We have a nature-based flood resilience program, all of that stuff. But actually, critically, land use change at scale is key to providing a better landscape that can deal with more intensive rainfall in the summer and more intensive rainfall in the winter, so it doesn't cause flooding, and that can hold that water for when we desperately need it in the summer. So we have a local nature recovery strategy. Our draft commits to 30% green infrastructure. We really need to be working with landowners, developers, regeneration funds, town planners, local councillors, everybody in that space to actually deliver that vision, because that's going to be key to helping our landscape unlock better water management. Nature recovery is absolutely intrinsic to this story, and it can't be seen as some kind of added luxury on the side here. And the last thing that I'll just stop talking, but leave you with is, we're moving into a new local authority landscape. We're in the middle of devolution and local government reorganisation. We really need mayors to take this on and think about water as they develop their regional spatial plans for new housing development, transport plans, economic growth plans, as well as local nature recovery strategy delivery. Water needs to be one of the key things, one of the lenses that is applied to all of those strategies to really give it the importance that it obviously needs.
Thank you very much, Sam and Wendy. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, great. There was a lot in all of that and a lot in all of the presentations, so I'm sure there are going to be lots of questions coming through, and indeed there are already. So I'm going to start actually with a question that's come through from Michael Knott, and I think Michael shared something previously on this before the webinar, which was, can you share any examples of successful case studies of integrated water management on new developments? And he also makes the point that higher costs that's not going to work too much for developers. So I think he's really looking for, where there's good examples of integrated water management in new developments. So panel, anything in your areas that you can point to? Otherwise, I can throw in one or two. So I was, sorry, go for it, Wendy. Or was it Sam? Sorry.
So absolutely, we provide a detailed SUDS advice to large-scale development, and we have a number of case studies. Very happy to share links with those. I will dig them up now. But yeah, we absolutely do have really good examples, yes, in new developments, but also actually retrofitting. We did a piece of work on Canvey Island where we implemented a really extensive SUDS scheme on existing housing, really warmly welcomed by the residents because it really tackled quite serious surface water flooding there. So for both, absolutely, we have good examples.
I was just going to add from the Enabling Water Smart Communities standpoint, Thames has also been working on publicising a database. So with a lot of reuse examples, but also with SUDS and other integrated water management tools, there's just been a bit of a barrier to getting that publicised. But once it is, that can be very much widely distributed and could be a good source, especially for developers to see these tools in action successful.
Shout, Nessa, I was also going to flag that the case study of examples of integrated water management and reuse on sites and SUDS and things, that's going to come through shortly. And also to the point about cost to developers, we're also looking into that as part of the project. So we've already done a piece of work looking into the costs of installing water reuse, which is available on the project's website, and Nathan might be able to put it into the chat. But we're extending that to look at the cost, not just of installation, but also the kind of whole life costs in terms of maintenance as well. And then we're also doing some work to look at the costs and benefits of implementing sustainable drainage systems as well. So do look out for those pieces of work, because they're really trying to make the case for the value of these things versus the costs. Okay, looking at the questions, other questions here. There's some big questions which we may not manage to answer fully. But picking up on what Jonathan's said, Jonathan Hunter, he said, excellent presentations. Integrated water management is the future. What's the panel's view of the practical steps that can be taken to scale this up so approaches are more common given the current economic climate? So we've heard some really good recommendations there about integration and collaboration, but what are the practical next steps? Perhaps I can go to...
I would, if I jump in, Kat.
Yeah.
I would say policy and regulation also. Yeah, as it was mentioned before, I think that could drive. I know that we have the Schedule 3, but I think there needs to be something more holistic that brings all the different levels and layers together, so that everybody has one single source of the truth, if you like, so that everybody can be working towards same standards.
Yeah.
What data would they be using? Monitoring the cost also. So I think that would seem like a practical and yeah, next step, like reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Sam and Wendy, given you're there working at a kind of regional level, I wonder whether you've got thoughts on those kind of practical next steps based on your experiences.
Shall I go, Sam? So I think government are recognising the importance of regional water planning groups such as Water Resources East, and they've actually updated some of the sort of asks of those groups, and seeing that there is that sort of trend towards more better integration, more links to water and the environment as well, like Sam said, in terms of delivering the local nature recovery strategy. So I think there are definitely steps. I think it's going to be really interesting as we see the new mayoral strategic authorities start appearing across the country, because if any of you have seen the white paper, and we haven't yet seen what the sort of latest iteration of that is from government and their thinking, which is they want the strategic authorities and the mayors to take this integrated and holistic view. And I think it's going to be really interesting, because I think that will be a great way of bringing together, a lot of the funding that's devolved with the stakeholders in a place, with that sort of local democracy and making sure we've got the right decisions in the right places in terms of that place shaping. So I think we are on a trajectory, and I think it's looking really positive. Yeah.
So I would agree entirely with all of that. I think the thing that I would just iterate again is that engagement with landowners. That partnership piece is critical. So getting the incentives, be it financial or regulatory, in place for developers and landowners to drive adoption of SUDs. Where is Schedule 3? Come on. Really, really frustrated at the delay in the rollout of that, which has been long promised. Getting the incentives for farmers in terms of land use change to help manage water so it doesn't become an issue in housing developments. It's kept on the land where it's needed. You know, all of those things, it's a holistic picture. So we know from our own partnership work that people are really keen to come together. There needs to be some support to enable that convening. And then those underpinning incentives, as I say, regulatory or financial, need to be in place to help people make the right decisions.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that links to a question we've got from Richard Whelan, which says, is the Enabling Water Smart Communities project highlighting policy and legislative barriers and putting forward potential ways of addressing those? So Sam, when you said lack of implementation of Schedule 3, that's one of the barriers, legislative barriers that we're looking to overcome through the Enabling Water Smart Communities project. But there are others as well. So for example, with reuse, currently water companies are not able to supply non-potable water to homes because of regulations. So that's something we need to overcome as well. There's more that we can do with the building Part G regulations as well to try and get more efficient devices and measures into homes from the outset. So the project is looking at these issues and trying to find ways to overcome them, and looking at this. I mean, it's not just policy, but it's kind of practice as well. So for example, with reuse and looking at how we can get that mainstreamed, we've developed a reuse roadmap, looking at all the different things that need to happen in order to get reuse happening kind of mainstream across the board in new developments. So we can share that reuse roadmap on the chat as well. Got 2 minutes left. Time is ticking by. There's a question from Matt Hollis about the focus being on residential development for the project. Are there work streams focusing on commercial and industrial development? This project is focused on residential development, I'm afraid, but that doesn't mean to say we're not linking with work going on in other places that are looking at non-household kind of reuse and water smart development. I know Anglian Water are doing a lot, for example. Question from Angus Ball from Wendy and Sam. Do councils reject or defer housing development plans if they don't come with rainwater harvesting or water management processes? Don't know if you're able to answer that one.
We can give advice. We are not the planning authority. We provide such advice. It's up to the planning authorities, who are the district councils. I think the structure of local authorities actually is quite genuinely poorly understood by the water industry. So it's really up to, it depends what's in the local plan as to what they require. But I think this is again where legislation could and should be tightened, not relaxed.
Great. And I think we're out of time. And I see in the chat that George Warren, who's involved in the project from Anglian Water, has posted a link to the work that the project is doing on reuse. So that includes the costs piece I mentioned and also the reuse roadmap. So I think the final thing to do is just go to the next slide, which just shows the other webinars that are coming up over the next few weeks. So this was the first one as part of a series, and we'll be sharing more about the different work streams of the project and those enabling actions over the following weeks. Next week's one is on community-based water stewardship, so looking at the kind of softer side as well of water smart communities. So it's just for me to say thank you very much to all the presenters and speakers. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for your questions. I'm very conscious that we haven't managed to get to them all, so we'll go through them and see if we can respond to them over email. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
Have a lovely afternoon.